we notice there's a guy on the back of the bus, and the driver is trying to, wake him up, and nothing happens. The guy doesn't move. We shake him, completely unreactive, like not a reaction at all. And we start looking at each other, is he dead?
SAR Experience.
Всем привет! Hello and welcome to another episode of the Vodcast with me, Connor Klein. This is episode, I think, 18 we're up to this stage, and this is a continuation of the stories that I've been telling you in the last few episodes of the Vodcast here on the SAR Experience. I started off telling you about the first trip that I took in Eastern Europe with my sensei, and there's lots of stuff for you guys to learn from my experience with him on that trip. We went to Romania, Moldova and Ukraine. We've gone through a few of the episodes. Just look back in the last episodes of the podcast here on YouTube, or maybe you're listening to this on the audio version in the podcast, and then just go back and look and listen to the last few episodes to catch what we did in Bucharest, Chisinau, Belz, which is in northern Moldova, and Vinica, which is a city in the center west of Ukraine, and then the capital, Kiev, which was during the time of the Euromaidan revolution. So this was a few years ago. And now we're going to go into what happened after Kiev. We went to Kharkiv, which is in the east of Ukraine, near the Russian border. At the time, it was just before Russia's annexation of Crimea and the war in Donbass, so there was a lot of tension. At the time, of course, we've been on Maidan, and there's lots of stuff for you guys to learn in those episodes, so I encourage you, if you haven't listened to them or watched them, to go back and check them out as well. So today I'm speaking to you from Odessa. I'm actually here, that's the monument to the unknown seaman behind me, and it's actually a national holiday, so there are lots of kids walking around and lots of families, so it's not as quiet as I expected, but we're getting here. As you see, it's an Indian summer, Babi Leta, as they say in Russian, and it's mid-October here. It's unbelievable. It's like 22 degrees every day. It's amazing sunshine. That's actually the reason I'm still here. Anyways, that's not relevant to today's episode so much. So we were in Kiev and we decided to go to Kharkiv. Now, Kharkiv is a city, as I said, in east of Ukraine. It's Ukraine's second biggest city. It has about 1.5 million inhabitants. I have a travel vlog from Kharkiv, which has been really well received. It's the most viewed and liked video about the city that you're going to find on YouTube. So I'm going to link that below up in a card, and of course put it below in the description as well. So go and watch that when you have time, if you want to get a taste what it's like to go to Kharkiv in the east of Ukraine. So we decided we're going to go there, and we have been doing this trip a little bit more spontaneously in terms of planning. We weren't planning so far ahead, even though we had a fair idea where we're going to go. So final weekend, so this is going to be the last kind of night, well, 2 of the 3 last nights that we're going to spend on this trip. We're going to go to Kharkiv in the east of Ukraine. So we get up after I explain what all the shenanigans that happened in Kiev, and we go to the train station to get a train. Now, things have improved in the last 5 years. You can actually book your tickets online. You can even do it in English as well as Russian and in Ukrainian. But at the time that wasn't possible, so we went there, and of course there were no trains left. That stage went looked at the bus options from near the train station. Marshuka, which is the local kind of buses, are an experience, not necessarily one that I think you should aim to necessarily for comfort. It's not, it's the opposite of comfort, but this is one of the kind of characteristic things about this region. So we went down. I wasn't super enthusiastic about having to do it. We hadn't slept very much, of course, and going on a Marshuka for 8 hours is going to be, pretty rough. By train it's a lot faster and a hell of a lot more comfortable. So in the end, after negotiating with some drivers, we arranged to take a bus. We're going to get in there pretty late, but we didn't want to stop on the way. We had considered that. It's something for you guys also to think about when your plans change. It looks like you can't make your destination. You need to look at whatever options are available to you. So we thought about maybe stopping in a city like about 2/3 of the way there for a night, just to get there at a reasonable time. The city is called Poltava. I've been there a couple of times. It's a very green city, but that would mean having to leave again the next day. And stopping, getting off with your suitcases, finding accommodation is just a little bit too much hassle. So we decided to go all the way in to Kharkiv by bus, even though, of course, that was going to be a pretty rough trip in our state at that time. So we get a bus, and it's just interesting to describe the scene on these kind of buses. I think it's very atmospheric for you guys to appreciate. So we're there, and there's just like Russian pop music blaring out of a TV. The bus is actually not as bad as it could have been. It was like a big kind of sprinter bus, I guess, and they had this Russian pop music just like blaring for the entire trip. And my friend actually had to take some business calls, and I was asking, what did you say on the business calls to people? I mean, you got Russian pop music. They didn't even know apparently that he was in Europe, never mind in a Russian-speaking country, obviously. And he said, well, I just said I was traveling, and everybody just kind of accepts that. They don't really think that I'm sitting on a bus on my way to, from Kiev to Kharkiv in eastern Ukraine. It's like kind of unthinkable. And I think that's a little bit of a tip also for you guys if you have a job where at times you can work remotely. That's something that's possible. You can actually work from a bus when you're traveling on a marshrutka, because with modern technology and just the fact that we can do stuff on our laptops, it just makes that all possible. So eventually, 8 hours later, I think it was either 6 to 8 hours it takes by car, by marshrutka, because you have to stop on the way to get to Kharkiv. And we arrive, it's at night, we're pretty exhausted, and we made some friends on the bus, especially my friend. I started talking to a girl on the bus and become kind of friendly with her. So we're just got out, we're in a group, we're just chatting away, and then we noticed there's a guy on the back of the bus, and the driver is trying to wake him up, and nothing happens. The guy doesn't move. Oh, he's just kind of asleep or something. And then we shake him, completely unreactive, like not a reaction at all. And we start looking at each other, is he dead? I mean, he's still warm. So yeah, it was pretty shocking. There's just that moment where you think, damn, fuck, maybe this guy has like died on the bus or something. And then, a few seconds later, he kind of comes through, and he was just super drunk and passed out and was like almost unwakeable. But that's another little bit of a taste of what Ukraine can be like in terms of people who drink too much on a bus, just out for the count, really stone cold out. It must have been 3 or 4 minutes before we got him up. So we're in Kharkiv, and at the time it's obviously just before the annexation of Crimea, as I said, and just before the war in Donbass. So there's a lot of tension in the city, and we go out and have a walk around. Obviously we went out clubbing that night, made some new friends, brought some girls home back to the apartment, and the next day we go walk around, and it's actually a demonstration, a pro-Russian demonstration in the city. And basically you had these kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, like skinhead thugs basically marching, shouting Россия, Россия through the streets. Maybe there was like 200 of them, and a lot of media and people filming them, and maybe photographers taking photos. And that's kind of interesting because obviously at the time there were these political tensions, and I mean today we're 5 years later, and of course there hasn't been a war in Kharkiv. There was a small amount of violence, but very, very little, thankfully. What was interesting is the contrast. The next day on the Sunday there was actually a Ukrainian pro-unity, I wouldn't call it demonstration, but like kind of meetup or gathering, and there was completely opposite. It was just like a complete cross-section of society. It was very relaxed, the atmosphere. It wasn't at all aggressive as opposed to the protests before, which really felt like a protest, a march, with all these guys who, I guess they were from Russia, maybe not actually from Ukraine even, and just marching on the street a little bit like you would see in the 1930s, the kind of scene, like kind of jackboots, and yeah, just this kind of very big contrast between the two groups. And to actually see that, what's interesting about this is to actually see with your own eyes as opposed to relying what you see in the media itself, right? Because the media obviously, as I like to always say, it's like, even if they're well-intentioned, they can also just be lazy and not show you what it's really like there. So we were actually there, and we could actually see the difference between the two groups of people who were pro-Ukrainian unity and people who were obviously pro-Russian and hoping that Russia would maybe annex or invade the country like they did in Donbass and in Crimea. Like that group of guys was like really small as well. Like it's just like maybe it wasn't even 100 as opposed to the thousands of people that we saw the next day. So that was kind of the political background to where we are. And basically Kharkiv is a crazy like kind of student party city. That's the way I always think of it in Ukraine. It's the city. I know we're in Odessa, so this is like summer capital normally, and here we have an Indian summer. And you know, here of course the nightlife is famous, but it's just during the summer months. Now Kharkiv is where people go, or people who are in the know, and now you're in the know because you watch this channel. It's where people go in the winter to have fun, and that's just what we did. We had just like this chaotic, crazy night out in Kharkiv, and my friend also brought actually the girl he met on the bus, he also formed a relationship with her over the weekend. I went out partying, brought a few girls back to the apartment afterwards as well. It was pretty crazy, the whole thing. Wild, decadent, Eastern hookup adventure basically. And what was interesting was the next day afterwards, like it's the last day, it's the Sunday, we're going to go back to Kiev. And a friend came around, a girlfriend maybe in the afternoon, and we had a coffee together and we just hung out a little bit in the apartment. And when we went to get the bus, we need to get a taxi. We have to give back the keys to the, at this stage it was the cleaner. Maybe even put on my shades. Do this a little better. So now wearing my shades because the sun is right in my eyes, rather than move the camera for the end of this story from Kharkiv. So my friend is there, Victoria, and we just kind of like are hanging out, and then when I go to give the keys back, I actually have to give it to the cleaning lady for the apartment because the host is not going to come. And just something really strange happened. I'm giving back the keys, and she started talking to my friend Vika, who was with me, and was like saying something that obviously annoyed her a bit because she was like, I don't care, I don't want to listen to this, blah, 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 blah. So we take a taxi, we go back to at the train station, we get on the train. I feel that's a little bit odd. I said to my friend, yeah, maybe just write to Vika and see what the hell was going on there with the cleaning lady. It was just weird the way that she reacted. And I get a message back saying, yeah, it's not, I mean, I don't care, it's none of my business. You're free to get up to whatever you want. But the cleaner, she asked for the phone number of the girl that you brought back yesterday, or would have been, I guess, in effect that morning. I was like, why would the cleaning lady want their phone number? First of all, why is she asking my, who she thinks is my girlfriend, for that number? It just seems it's like completely crazy. She said, yeah, she said there's another guy in the building, he wants their phone number, he saw them leave. But I said, this is mental. So I called the cleaner because I had her phone number, and I was like, why are you asking my girlfriend for the number of other girls? Like, who do you think you are? What are you up to? And she was just, yeah, Connor, can you give it? Because the guy, he liked the girl that you brought back last night. And I was just like, you are obviously mental. So the thing to learn from that, I mean, obviously pulling up the phone, my friend wasn't upset anyways, but it was just kind of a crazy thing for someone to do, right? I mean, talk about lack of discretion, and obviously I wouldn't give someone just their phone number to another random person anyways. It just seemed very odd. So I guess lesson from that is always just be careful of cleaners who are crazy who might start saying things to your girlfriend and stuff like that. It was just a bit weird. So we get on the train, and we're heading back to Kiev. It's last night. We're going to be on this insane trip that we've had in Eastern Europe. And I made a huge mistake on the train because I felt a little bit like my eye was itchy, and I started to scratch it. And then it got a little bit bloodshot. And then unfortunately, take it off, I scratched the other eye. And then my entire eyes went completely bloodshot. In fact, I became so agitated that I looked like I basically had Ebola, if you know what that kind of disease is, where people like they go kind of mutant-like. So I completely screwed up, and we get to Kiev, we check in, we're in this amazing apartment in Kiev. Again, it's after Maidan, so everything is super cheap and there's so much availability for amazing apartments. And my friend is like, hey, we don't need to go out, I don't want to kill you because you look like death. I couldn't even take a nap, I couldn't even close my eyes. They were so edged and so swollen after whatever bacteria had gotten into them. So yeah, first lesson from that is like always bring hand sanitizer. I will do that since then. Just make sure you don't pass germs or bacteria and infect yourself. So I obviously gotten conjunctivitis, which is like basically a bacteria that, or virus. Actually, I'm not sure what conjunctivitis really is, but anyways, it looks awful. And so I'm kind of lying there saying, no, we're gonna go out, we're gonna make it one last big night. We've had this insane, epic adventure over the last 12 days. And we can't not go out the last night, even if I'm close to death, we're gonna do it. So we go out, and we start to walk around in the center of Kiev. There is like we walk into what's basically arena. and that's kind of a very touristic part where there are a lot of clubs and bars and stuff like that. And we kind of walk around. There seems to be some sort of strip club there, not my scene at all. So I'm not interested in that. And then we see two girls just walking in the middle of kind of arena. Start chatting to them. They wanted to go to a club nearby. It was closed. Basically, we went to another club, and so we're there. We basically both hook up with them, start making out in the club, in the table, and then I leave with the girl who I'm with. It's also kind of funny because when we're on the way to the club, my friend who doesn't speak Russian was like, "Hey, do you speak English?" He's like, he actually even tried, "Do you speak Arabic again?" But that didn't work either. And I was like, "Dude, I got it taken care of. This is why I learned Russian." So that should be another good tip for you guys. This is the advantage: is when this girl did not speak any English, then there's just like no chance. But her friend did, so it kind of worked out that way. So we're in this club. I go to leave with the girl who I'm with, obviously. She doesn't necessarily want to go to my place. I remember she said, "Oh, I want to go back I just want to sleep." I said, "Cool, whatever. I'll drop you off on the way." So we go to her apartment, and she gets out. She rings the doorbell. No answer. She says, "Oh, my sister has the key." I was like, "Well, if she doesn't answer, just come sleep in my place." She's like, "Oh, I don't really want to do that," but she rings doorbell again, and again, no answer. So I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is looking very good. My look is going to hold out on this last night." Even though, remember, the whole time I look like I have Ebola. I look horrific. I look like the worst like physical state imaginable, and that's like so. And this girl is really, really pretty. I probably should have said at the beginning why my friend was so interested in her when we were in the taxi on the way there, and that just shows that sometimes, as long as you've got a good vibe and that you're really like just so fucking delusionally enthusiastic about things, that you can overcome this. So, and also that looks, as I said in one of my other videos, the one about 5 reasons to date Ukraine, are not as important here, as long as you have like just a cool vibe and attitude. That goes so much further. So then she says, "Okay, I go to your place, I just sleep with you at your place." I was like, "Jum." And all I hear all of a sudden is a voice in the intercom, "Privyet, da." She's like, "Oh, sorry, my sister woke up." So the tech server was in stitches laughing at me. He was like, "Dude, I was really hoping that it would work out." And I was like, "Yeah, there you go. Sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't. The gods are not looking in your favor." So I just go home alone, sleep in the room. Next morning, I wake up. I send a message to my friend, make sure he's gotten to the airport, and the answer is, "Dude, I'm in the room beside you." I was like, "Man, you need to be, at the airport now. Like, you're not going to make it." So I ring him, get him a taxi. Basically, he comes out within 2 minutes, like disheveled looking, and just like we throw his stuff downstairs into the taxi. Taxi takes off. He even called me, make sure he's going to the right terminal, all that kind of stuff. So he gets to the airport, calls me, says, "Yeah, thanks, man. Just about, the flight was a little bit delayed. Maybe even that's how he made it, but he definitely was like last minute to make the flight." He said, "This is the most epic experience I've ever had over the last 12 days, just like traveling, seeing new cultures, just new experiences, things like the sauna, crossing the borders, girls, obviously beautiful women, crazy hookups. This is what, the kind of ultimate party adventure that guys like you and me like want to engage in, basically." So I was like, cool, just chilling on my sofa. Suddenly the door to his room opens, and out walks this blonde girl and wearing his shirt, and it's obviously startled when she sees me on the sofa. I was like, "Privyet." And then she kind of like sheepishly scurries out of the apartment. She actually forgot some of her stuff, but I did return this to her in a few weeks later, and that was the end of the trip. This first trip I took my sensei, where I first started to really get to know him and show him first, because I was able to obviously provide the value there in terms of being a tour guide and really show him this part of the world. And the idea of me telling these stories, of course, I mean, I told you and you wanted me to tell these kind of stories, is that you can learn something yourself from my experiences. I can inspire you in some way to like travel to less common places like Kharkiv, for example. No one thinking of going there, but it really is for partying and for pretty girls and just crazy atmosphere. I think it's the best place outside of summer in Ukraine, so that's why I would encourage you to go there. And then you see different things that we encountered, like for example, the cleaner, and this like her trying to ditch me in or get me in trouble with who she thought was my girlfriend, and just to be aware of some of the dynamics that can go on when you're staying somewhere and people see more than one girl come in and out of your apartment. Just be wary of that. And also health when you're traveling, super important. I got conjunctivitis. It took me weeks to recover from it when I left Ukraine, and that was just bad hygiene, not taking care, touching. All I did was use a tissue and have hand sanitizer. I never would have had this problem. So, if you have traveled to this region at all yourself, if you've had similar stories, then let me know. Let everyone else know who reads these. Watches these videos in the comment section below the video. That's the end of that series of stories. Next week there's going to be Vodka Vodkas with another story, which is really exciting. It's about Transnistria, the republic that doesn't exist, that's very close to here, and my trip there New Year's Eve, where I almost got in a lot of trouble with some Transnistrian soldiers. That's coming up. If you're not a subscriber, well, you got to the end of this video, so you're probably already subscribed, and if not, just there's that red subscribe button. But what you really want to do is whack the notification bell beside it, because that way you are notified when you get a pop-up, you get an email or something that tells you when I upload a new video. In general, I'm uploading twice a week at the moment, and I look forward to seeing all of your smiling, enthusiastic faces for Eastern Europe next week in the next video, or maybe even sooner. Maybe there's a Tip Thursday, maybe there's another cool video coming out of Travel Vlog. Gonna have one from Odessa really soon. This is the last week doing the final recording. So until next time, do svidaniya, do pobачення, peace.
SAR Experience.